With the release of David Bruckner's Hellraiser on Hulu, we now have 11 films in this franchise, so let's talk about them from worst to best. Welcome to Box of Chocolates, where you never know what you're gonna get. Until this last month or so, I had never seen a Hellraiser movie before. I grew up watching so many horror franchises, but Pinhead just always escaped me for some reason. I sat down, I watched all of them leading up to the new one. I reviewed all of them, so you can go check out that playlist. I'd really appreciate it for my in-depth thoughts about each one. And so now we are gonna talk about them from my least favorite to my favorite. All just gonna be my opinion, of course. We're gonna stay spoiler-free, just talk a little bit about each one as we go along here. It was interesting because we started off very strong. I was very surprised by the first one and what it was actually like and how much I enjoyed it. First couple sequels, okay, we're doing good, and then you get into a long string of straight to DVD, and oh boy. Although I have to say, as a whole, the franchise wasn't even as bad as I expected it to be. There are only a couple that are like the worst, like really, really bad. The ones in the middle are just meh. They have some good ideas in there, but they're just really bland. But let's get into this list. There's two at the bottom that I considered to be really terrible. Starting off here at number 11.
Are we rolling?
Yes.
Can you get a shot of downtown LA before we say goodbye to it forever?
The ninth one, Revelations. Bottom of the barrel. This one was only made because they had to make one to retain the rights. It took them like 3 weeks to make the whole thing. And you can tell the budget, it looks like it was made for $32. The acting is terrible, the characters are terrible. To be fair, this one was written to be Hellraiser, and it feels like it. The Cenobites are being used properly this time, which they hadn't really been for a while at this point, but it is just so poorly made as a whole, and really bland and uninteresting. This is the first one that didn't have Doug Bradley, and the guy that they got is like one of the worst choices they could have made. His face just doesn't fit Pinhead. He's got a big baby face and it doesn't work at all. It feels like dollar store Pinhead and completely unintimidating. Terrible representation of that character. It's like the worst thing they could have done after Doug Bradley's departure. Easily the worst one, no question in my mind, but this next one also sucks. Here's number 10.
Welcome, Hellraisers. Invitations.
The eighth one, Hellworld. I just found this so boring. I liked some of these actors. Catherine Winnick was competent enough in the lead. Henry Cavill's in there. Lance Henriksen's there, which is pretty cool, seeing him. And there's some good ideas, like especially with the twist that happens towards the end, and exploring people who know Hellraiser through this video game that they play. But ultimately, the movie is just them wandering around this house the entire time. There's no story at all. For the entire movie, the Cenobites just feel completely out of place, like more so than they ever have, even in all those other straight-to-DVD movies. A lot of the characters are obnoxious. They're just walking around this mansion, trying to get laid. Obnoxious rock music blaring the entire time. I was just so bored the entire time. It was a unique setup, and we had some good ideas at the end, but the meat of the movie I just found so uninteresting. Now we're moving into a section where the movies are not good, but they're not as bad as they could have been, especially being straight to DVD, a lot of them being scripts that didn't even start out as Hellraiser. Here's number 9.
It's perfect.
The sixth one, Hellseeker. A big problem with this one is that it's almost the exact same movie as the one that came before it, Inferno, which that's just how it is. Inferno came first. If it hadn't, I might look at this one in a little bit better light, but it feels so similar to that one. And that one already didn't feel like Hellraiser. It felt like a random generic detective story with Pinhead inserted in, which I'm pretty sure is what it was. And this one feels exactly the same. You bring back Kirsty Cotton, but for a minute at the beginning and 2 minutes at the end. It didn't even really need to be her, and I don't even really care necessarily for what they do with her here. The main character is not interesting to follow. He's just kind of a dick. It's just scenes of, where's my wife? Then some woman tries to bang him. I wonder what happened to my wife? Then some woman tries to bang him. And just feels way too similar to Inferno and not as interesting with the ideas it explores. Now moving on to number 8.
what you want from me?
Yeah, it's the fifth one, Inferno. They're next to each other because they're very similar, but Inferno just got there first, and I think it does do more interesting things. Again, very boring for the most part because the main character is such an asshole in every way. He's supposed to be, but there's a way to do that properly, and there was just nothing like charismatic or interesting enough or good enough about the side cast or the plot to enhance him or level him out. He's just an asshole, and I don't like him, and I have to watch him the whole time. That does tie into the ending with the reveal by the end, which I thought was actually really well handled and gave me some stuff to think about, which is more than I ever expected from a straight-to-DVD Hellraiser. I think the way they handled that end and the way his character resolved was well done. That was like the saving grace. Scott Derrickson brought some good visuals throughout. He definitely handles it a lot better than some of the later directors for these straight-to-DVD things. But if it hadn't been for that ending, this would have just been kind of intolerable. The ending gives it a bit of an edge. Next up is number 7.
Evil seeks evil.
The 10th one, Judgment. This one's disgusting. There's like spit and vomit all over the place for some reason. I don't need any of that. I don't really care for that. But it is a step up from the last couple sequels that had come before it. Again, it was made because they had to make one to retain the rights, but the guy behind it, Gary J. Tunnicliffe, was passionate about it, and you can tell compared to something like Revelations. They use the budget much better. The acting is more serviceable, at least. There's more creativity to the Cenobite designs. The guy who's playing Pinhead is no Doug Bradley, but he's way better than the guy in Revelations. He's okay, he just kind of feels like a pale imitation of Doug Bradley. There's extra lore added. They changed some things about the Cenobites just to give it a unique feel, which is all very cool. It's just that the story is the most boring story ever, because it's this generic serial killer investigation, which is a total knockoff of Seven, with the most obvious reveal of all time, and characters that I didn't care about at all. So the story along the way, which just kind of felt like it had the Cenobites shoved into it randomly, which is a common theme of these movies, the story just couldn't carry it along. So it has some merit. It's better than a lot of these other ones, but it's not good. And now number 6. The 7th one, Deader. Worst title, I hate it, but not the worst movie. I gave this the crown out of the straight-to-DVD ones because of the main character. I was debating between this and Judgment, and I really remember this main character and the actress Kari Wuhrer. I think she was doing a good job, and I enjoyed following her story. It's a different setting this time, and this idea of this cult who's working on like bringing themselves back to life fits more in line with Hellraiser. It still doesn't really feel cohesive. You can tell that it was another script, and then Pinhead got inserted in there every so often. But I remember the main character's journey, the things that she went through, what she had to go through by the end to wrap things up, and because of that, I give it the edge. Top 5, all we have left are the theatrical releases and the Hulu one, so let's go number 5.
Oh my God.
Do I look like someone who cares what God thinks?
The 4th one, Bloodline. If somebody was watching through Hellraiser and they were enjoying it, I would advise going through the 4th one. I don't think it's good, but at least it was the last theatrical one, kind of wraps things up in a certain way, so may as well go at least to number 4 if you feel like it, then skip ahead to the new one that just came out. I like the idea of this taking place in 3 different time periods and this information that's passed down through generations to ultimately defeat Pinhead and the Cenobites way in the future. The segment in the past is easily the best. I like how they all have a different visual style, but the visual style there is the best one. It's the most interesting. Seeing the Cenobites in that time, it adds an extra kind of creepy factor. Unfortunately, I think we spend the least time there. And then the least interesting segment is the present day, because it's just, oh, present day again. And the main character in that timeline is just some boring dude. And that's the one that we're with the most, unfortunately. The future segment is silly. It's in space, but at least there's some dumb entertainment value when it comes to that, and just a goofy ending that you can appreciate just for its silliness. So ultimately, not good, but it has some memorable aspects for the different generational storytelling. So next up is number 4.
And your suffering will be legendary even in hell.
The second one, Hellbound. A lot of people like this one a lot. I've heard people call it amazing. I've heard some people say they like it more than the original. And if that's the case, that's fine. It's not one of my favorites. It has good things going for it. I like how it expands the lore. It kind of has a bit of a different tone. It kind of takes it in more fantastical directions with the Leviathan stuff, which is really cool. It's cool to see Julia and Kirsty back, and a lot of good imagery, great practical effects, of course. And there's a lot of good things about it that I appreciate. But there's a lot of things that really drag it down. I don't hate it or anything. Like, I could watch it again, should I have to, but it's not one that I'm rushing to watch again. There were things that really held it back for me. Mainly the pacing. It starts with a recap of the first one, then Kirsty recaps it again, and then it's just really slow, mostly in the editing. Like, there's a scene where Julia and the doctor guy are walking down this hallway. We'll cut over to some other people for a while. We'll cut back. They're still walking down the hallway. Cut over to some other people. We'll cut back and they're still walking down the hallway. And it just keeps showing them walking down this hallway. And it's like, cut. Stop it. The doctor guy was an uninteresting character because he was just crazy, I guess. He's like, oh, I really got to get to the Cenobite realm. And I'm like, why? And then he gets there and immediately gets fucked up, and I'm like, well, what the hell did you think was gonna happen? Then you have this girl, Tiffany, who's supposed to have some kind of relationship with Kirsty. I'm like supposed to care about a bond there, but there's no time spent developing a bond there, so I didn't care about her or their relationship in the slightest. So there were things about it that really held it back, but there are certain things that I appreciate. I get why people like it. I mean, it's obviously up here number 4 in my ranking. It's better than most of them, but it was one that had a lot of issues for me. So now we're going on to number 3.
I am the way.
And it's Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. Yeah, I like it more than the second one. It's dumb. It's just like a stupid slasher where Pinhead just goes around and messes up a bunch of dudes, which is pretty cool, and that's the thing. It's fun. It's entertaining. I like it as a different approach to Pinhead, having him be fully unleashed after the ending of the second one. I like how Doug Bradley is still able to give this intimidating performance even when he's just like a head trapped in a pillar. But after that, he's unleashed, and it's Pinhead as we've never seen him before, just rampaging through the streets, doing whatever he wants. That scene in the church is so cool. That's like one of the best Pinhead moments. It's one of the ones that I think of at the top of my list when I think of cool Pinhead moments. It's just really different, and it is entertaining. Yes, it's not what Pinhead and what Hellraiser was, but for this one different approach, I think it is a fun, different approach to do just this one time. And I enjoyed the characters well enough. Terry and Joey had the relationship that I cared about that Kirsty and Tiffany didn't have. Like, I wanted Terry to be okay. I wanted her and Joey to bond. I liked how their relationship was developing. There was a lot of really bad acting, and it's dumb. It's goofy. It was just entertaining. Like, I wouldn't call it good. I probably, if I was gonna watch Hellraiser, would probably just watch my top 2, but I would be okay watching Hellbound and Hell on Earth if I really, really felt like it. Probably wouldn't continue to Bloodline, but maybe just for the hell of it. But anyway, top 2, here we go.
What is it you pray for?
Hulu Raiser, the new one. Very good, very solid. Not amazing, but it's the kick in the ass that Hellraiser needed after all of this time. So much better. Maybe I am biased because I just watched all of those bad sequels, so now anything is gonna look good in comparison, but no, it's genuinely a solid Hellraiser movie that I think most fans who've ever liked a Hellraiser movie, who have wanted something fresh from the series, will enjoy. The characters are solid enough, the acting is really good, I like our new Pinhead, Jamie Clayton's doing a really good job, different enough to not be compared to Doug Bradley, but still feels like Pinhead. There's that one line in there that I really liked. I want to say it, but I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't watched it yet. Really good gore, practical effects, simple story, but good. I love the way they use the puzzle box. I think they used it better than they ever have before. The way it shifted and changed and had all these different purposes throughout the movie. I thought that was really cool. Very well directed, very good visuals, Cenobite designs. I really enjoyed it. But as probably expected, at the top of my list is
We'll tear your soul apart.
the original Hellraiser. This was such a cool experience watching it for the first time because I've seen so many other slashers, if you even want to call it that, but horror franchises with these iconic villains, Freddy, Jason, Michael, Chucky, whoever, that I've been watching since I was a small child, and so Pinhead just always evaded me for some reason, and so I developed my own idea of what Pinhead and Hellraiser must be like. And by the time I actually watched Hellraiser, I was like, oh shit, Pinhead's not really in this very much, and I didn't even mind because the story was really cool of Frank and Julia and Kirsty and her father. Those characters were really well done. Frank and Julia, that whole villainous duo there, like they stood out a hell of a lot. They originally planned for Julia to be the recurring villain throughout the whole thing, but Pinhead and the Cenobites were more popular. Understandably so. I don't know how they couldn't predict that. Great gore, like amazing effects when Frank is reforming. Like, it's not the kind of thing you want to eat during, along with Judgment, but Judgment is like, oh, stop. I wish I could eat right now. You're annoying me with the vomit, the blood and the guts. That's cool shit. It's just a cool story. It handles it in a really unique way. Pinhead's not just like a guy going around killing people. He is in the third one, and I am entertained for what that one is. But for this, the Cenobites just showing up sparingly to serve that purpose and be these executioners of pain and pleasure and to respond to the solving of the box. Doug Bradley with this performance that instantly became iconic. They were really cool. I really enjoyed Hellraiser. Like, it's one that I think is kind of underrated. It doesn't really get talked about alongside a lot of the big horror franchises, probably because of all the bad sequels. Hopefully this new one will revitalize it. People will not only watch this one and whatever more they make, but also will go back and maybe talk about the first one a little bit more, because it deserves it. Like, it's gonna be in my list of horror movies that I recommend to people if they can handle the gross stuff. I'm glad the new one came out because it gave me an excuse to finally get into this franchise. The first one and the most recent one are ones that I would definitely rewatch that I think are good to great. So there it is. That's my ranking. Leave yours down in the comments below, which ones you like, which ones you don't like, and why. It's a lot more interesting to talk about why you feel the way you do rather than just a list of numbers. Of course, this was all just my opinion. Your list is probably going to be different to a degree. You're going to have some shuffled around, and that's totally fine. We all have our own personal list. So there we have it. That was my journey with Hellraiser. It was interesting. Hopefully you guys can check out a lot of those reviews. I really appreciate the support. If there are any longtime Hellraiser fans who are watching me go through all this for the first time and form these opinions, I don't know how weird my list is going to come across. I know a lot of people really like Hellbound, but we'll see. It was entertaining to talk about these movies, so I'm glad we have this new one, and I hope there'll be a bright future ahead for Pinhead. If David Bruckner wants to make another one, let him. We'll see what happens, but thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. We got a Halloween ranking to do pretty soon, and we also got a lot of other movies to talk about. New, old, all genres. Should be fun. Thumbs up, all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate the support, and I hope to see you for the next one.